Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this national webinar from the Federation of Small Businesses. My name is Mike Goodall. I'm your host this morning. I'm one of the development managers that works for the Federation. I'll shortly be handing over to our guest speaker today, who is Jim Hughes from Untamed. Jim's done some sessions for us before, and in terms of his background, he's a inspirational speaker who's helped individuals in teams in business, sport, military and other sectors, really to help them to overcome their own sort of barriers to success and personal growth. So Jim will give a short presentation in a moment. We're going to have questions and answers at the end. So if you have any questions that arise through the talk, could you please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, type in your question, and I'll be picking those up as we go along, and we'll cover those questions at the end. Today's session is being recorded, so it will be available if you want to revisit, or if you want to share with other people who couldn't be here today. Just go to our on-demand page on the FSB website, which is fsb.org.uk, and you can watch it again or share as you see fit. Now, if you're not an FSB member, we would obviously love the opportunity to speak to you further about the many benefits of joining. So please do, again, take a look at that website, fsb.org.uk, have a look at the section about joining us, and you'll see there's a huge range of really worthwhile benefits that, particularly in the current environment, really do pay their way. So I'm going to hand over now to Jim. I'm sure you'll find this talk really interesting and useful, as they have been in the past. Do pop your questions in the Q&A function, and I'll be back at the end for the Q&A and closing remarks. So I'll hand over to you now, Jim.
Thank you very much, Mike. Pleasure to be here, and good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining. As you probably gathered from the title of this webinar, today I'm going to be talking to you about the art of goal setting, how to succeed where others falter. Before I get into that, I just want to tell you a little bit about me, just to give you some context as to who I am and why this means so much to me. I have been, as Mike suggested, I've been speaking, I've been coaching, I've been running events for about 5.5 years now. 3 of those years were living around the world nomadically, growing the business as we traveled, my wife and I, Kim. And in that time, I have been on a mission, I suppose, to help senior professionals, military, entrepreneurs, sports people reach their potential, have more fun, but also reconnect with themselves, reconnect with who they truly are, reconnect with others, you know, whether it's their co-workers, their team, their family, and then reconnect with their work. And where most people in my profession, in the sort of professional development, personal development space operate, is to help people reconnect with their work. They start the conversation there. Whereas I love to bring the conversation right back to its origins and understand, okay, what the work that you're doing, how is that connected to you? And that applies also to goal setting, because there's so many emotions and identities and fears and narratives that are built into the goals that we create that can either work really well for us, or, as we're going to cover in this webinar, count very much against us. So that's me. As I go along, I encourage you to actively listen. And I know that sounds really obvious and blatant, but a lot of people sit and they just scribe. They just see what's on the screen and they blindly write it out. I know, because I did it for 3 years at university and it didn't really help me learn much. So the words I've written on the screen and on the slides in isolation won't really mean very much. I've done that partly to keep it simple, but also because I want to discourage you from just sitting there and reading and writing down what it is that you see on the screen. So please just be present, pay attention, write down anything that comes up that actually means something to you. Also, just to check in, that this will come across, as the title suggests, as a very negative view on goal setting. Now, there has to be said, there is a lot of positive goal setting out there. A lot of people do it very well, and it works for a lot of people. And when done well, it is a very impactful tool to help you grow and to help your business grow. However, this is going to be focused on what happens when goal setting is done poorly and the impacts that it can have. And finally, please be open to the idea that this may apply to you more than you realize. And I'm guessing you'll kind of be open to that already, hence why you've signed up to this webinar in the first place. But there's a lot of times we we think that this stuff applies to us only in a small section. Like, oh, there's a couple of things that I'm really struggling with, so I'm going to apply all of these learnings to those 2 things. And all of the rest of it, I'm going to assume is going well in my life. And this doesn't really apply. That may be the case, but by assuming that, we're just closing ourselves off to more learning. So just please do assume that this can apply to you more than you realize, into more areas than you realize. Okay, so first off, I'm going to share the problems with goal setting, the impacts that it can have on us. There's 3 things you've got to be really careful of, 3 resources you've got to be really careful of when you run a business, and just in life in general. They are your time, your money, and your energy. And especially time and especially energy, they are finite. Okay, so once they're gone, they're gone. When we set goals and when we pursue goals that aren't really aligned with us, and that we're not necessarily successful, what we're doing is we are wasting valuable resources on those goals. And often those goals are a goal that we never really cared about in the first place. And we'll get into why that's the case and the impact that has shortly. But just be so mindful of the opportunity cost. When we set a goal and we pursue it no matter what, we are saying no to all of the other areas in our life and our business in that moment. And if those other areas in our life and our business have more impact for us and potentially more use, then all we're doing is we're depriving ourselves of that. So just be really mindful of the fact that when we set poor goals, we're wasting valuable resources pursuing them, especially if we never really cared about them in the first place. Also, the more we fail, the harder we try, which makes it worse. I'm sure we've all heard of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. What a lot of you, and I didn't realize until I started looking into this recently, is when they realized the tower was starting to lean, what they did in their infinite Italian architectural wisdom was they started to build the lower wall higher. They just started to put more bricks on it to try and level the thing at the top. Now, as you can imagine, that only had a negative impact. What that did was it helped add weight onto the side that was already sinking, and the whole thing made it even more leaning, I suppose. It sounds a bit weird and not really related to this, but it does, because what it means is, as we're pursuing a goal that we may never have cared about in the first place, we start to realize, oh shit, we're not actually making this goal. Let's say it's a financial goal. I want to make 10 grand this month. I want to make 20 grand this month, whatever. We then realize that we're not actually achieving it. So we double down. We put more efforts into achieving that goal than we did in the first place. Now, that's okay if the goal is aligned, if it's purposeful, if it's truly who you are and where you want to go. But if it's not, all we're doing is we're doubling down on the thing that's not working for us in the first place. And again, that's just compounding the negative impacts. This poor performance, again, assuming the goal is a poor one and assuming we're not achieving it, which is so common, as I said from the title, about 85% of business owners not achieving their goals. This poor performance undermines our confidence. We set these goals and we don't achieve them. And then that kills our confidence. And we go, okay, well, let's set another goal. And we don't achieve that either. And as we go along, it just erodes our confidence. And all that does is it breeds learned helplessness. It goes, well, I mean, the last 5 goals, I've only made 4 of them. And even that was a bit of a tenuous link. So what's really the point? Am I going to bother setting goals? Which means that the energy changes. Am I going to even bother trying to grow this business? Because whenever I've tried, it's not really worked. And that just breeds apathy, which leaves us feeling frustrated, which leaves us feeling doubtful. We start to question who we are. We start to question what we're capable of. We start to question whether we're on the right path, whether our business could actually make any money, whether we are going to get to where we want to get to. And that, the frustration and the doubt, that just so often we don't realize it consciously. It's a nagging, sort of sapping energy away from us constantly. We live with that without even realizing it. And that ultimately ends up leaving us feeling exhausted, especially when we start to double down on those goals and throw more energy and more time and more money into them as we go along, which leaves us feeling exhausted. And obviously, like I said, time, money, and energy are critical, especially when you have a small business. So when you have no energy from poor goal setting, you've got no energy towards doing the good stuff as well and making a difference, which then ultimately breeds apathy. And apathy is the beginning of the end. If we haven't already reached that point by the level of exhaustion already. So it may sound like I'm doom mongering, and it may sound like I'm just focusing on the worst case scenario, but this is more common than we realize. And I know this personally because I've been through this myself. I've set goal after goal after goal after goal after goal. And I've generally been left with a negative outcome and a negative view on goals, which has affected my confidence. And it's led to all of these emotions and all of these impacts. So why not become better at it? Why not uncover what's creating these things in the first place? In order to do that, well, actually, before I go into that, I'd love you to put in the chat. I think there's a Q&A function. I think there's going to be a multiple choice for you out of 10. I just would love to check in, and we can cover this in the questions later. I want to know how positive out of 10 your experience with goal setting has been up to now. So 10 being, I've loved every minute of goal setting. I've achieved them all. They've made me feel amazing. They've helped me grow my business. And 1 or 0 being, they're the worst thing ever in the history of the world. So if you could put a score, just put one number, whatever it is, out of 10 for you, and we can tap into that, and we can uncover that a little bit later on. So where do we go wrong when we're setting goals? How can they end up so catastrophic and so impactful for us? Well, we as human beings, one of our basic needs is certainty. We crave certainty in lots of different forms. Certainty that we are loved, certainty that we're going to make money, certainty we've got enough money in the bank, certainty that our business is making a difference, certainty that we can provide for our family. And that certainty comes across in goal setting as well. We like to have something to aim for. But often we don't actually know what we want. We're kind of sat there with our pen and paper with our business. We go, right, look at 6 months ahead. Where am I going to go? What do I want to achieve? I don't really know. Well, I've kind of been influenced by this network, this accelerator program that I was in, and a couple of my peers are suggesting this. And I heard a podcast which says I should definitely focus more on marketing and grow my customer base. Another one says I should lower my acquisition cost. Another one said I should grow my team. So we don't necessarily know what we want, and therefore we are impacted by external voices because we don't have that foundational awareness ourselves. But because of our need for certainty, we don't just sit there and go, well, I'm not really wedded to anything at the moment. I'm just going to leave it and see what comes up. And when something feels right, I'm going to go for it. We don't do that because we need something. We want something to aim for. So we just create an arbitrary goal. And again, often this is linked to or being influenced by an external source, be it a mentor, social media, family member, team member even. And we just create this arbitrary goal, which often isn't emotionally connected to us in the way that it might be, in the way that it probably should be, if it's going to empower us and inspire us. So we create an arbitrary goal that we may not really care about. We don't really know why we're doing it. We don't really know what it's hopefully going to achieve and whether it's aligned or not. Now, because that goal has come from a need, it's come from a place of certainty, it's come from a place for us needing to have something to aim for and being influenced by outside circumstances or influences, that goal itself then becomes a need. We say, right, okay, in the absence of, okay, what I'm going to do is I need to focus more on marketing. I need to spend X amount of pounds on Facebook ads over the next whatever. If I don't do that, I'm not going to become the person that person in the podcast says I should be able to become. I'm not going to make the difference that I could make if I don't achieve this goal. So there's a fear-based energy behind the goal. And it becomes a need. It's rather than going, well, that would be nice to have. That would be something cool to aim for. That would make a difference to other people in my business. It becomes a need. It becomes something that we have to have. And if we don't have it, we question who we are. We question our value. We question whether we're on the right path. And there's so much fear behind that goal. And then it transitions from being no longer what I do, i.e. the goal saying, well, it's all about making more of a difference and finding more customers. That's what I do. I make a bigger difference to more people. Whether we achieve that goal or not becomes a reflection of who we are. It becomes a reflection of our place in the entrepreneurial world or our place in society. And if we don't meet that goal, we are not enough. We have failed. And I know, again, this sounds so dramatic, and you're probably thinking there going, I don't know what you're on about. My goals aren't that big and I don't really care that much about them and I'm not bought in. as I mentioned on the first slide, just be open to the fact that subconsciously this is may have been having a greater impact on you than you realize. When we start to attach identity to our own performance in business, that is huge. And goal setting or not achieving our goals in this particular instance is such a clear indicator for us whether we are being who we say we want to be and who we think we can be and who society says that we should be. So that creates so much fear, so much tension, and so much negative energy. Thankfully, however, there is a better way. And I'm going to use the word, I mean, I've already used it a lot, that the word emotion, the word energy comes up so much. And that's the bit that so many people get wrong. They don't tune in to their own feelings. They don't tune into who they really are and what they really want. They are led by external forces and they just set a goal and run with it. So the first step I would love you to take is to lay the foundations. And what I mean by that is check in emotionally as to your current situation, whether you have money in the bank, whether you have the emotional bandwidth to pursue something else, whether you have, let's say you're thinking of setting a business goal, but actually if you check into your current situation, you realize maybe my health goals that I have are probably more urgent. Maybe I should lose that, couple of kilos first. Maybe I should create more space for sleep and rest, or work on my relationship because my marriage is really affecting my life, which is much more impactful than my business. So whatever the outcome is, just check in. Where are you right now? And also, what do you believe? Do you believe that you are capable of achieving what you think you want to achieve? Do you believe that the business that you are running is the right business for you? And in doing that, in order to make this emotional check-in valuable and relevant for you, you've got to set your ego aside. Ego plays such a massive role in goal setting. If you can set it aside, then you can allow yourself to realize where your goals have maybe gone wrong in the first place. You can allow yourself to realize where your business may not be where you want it to be as it currently stands. And you can also realize that the goal that you were going to set is actually not for you, and it may have been driven by your ego. It may have been driven by the fear of proving yourself to somebody else. So when you can set that aside, you can allow yourself to tune into how you're really feeling, and you're going to be much more capable of creating a goal that actually means something to you. On that level, the next stage is to identify what you really want. So you've set the foundation, you've checked in emotionally, you've put your ego aside, you've realized the situation that you're currently in and how you feel around it. Now it's a case of sitting there and going, right, what is it that I really want? Listen to that voice. That voice is a voice that some of us are aware of, and a lot of us aren't aware of it until we start to listen to it. And then when we start to listen to it, we notice it more and more. And it may be that little voice that's going, is that path that you're on really the right path at the moment? Is that actually an area you want to double down on, or is that just something you feel like you should do? That voice may also say something like, slowing down would be cool. Having a little bit of a rest might be cool. Growing your business isn't absolutely everything, is it? It's just that little voice that you may never have allowed yourself to listen to because you don't like what it says, because it doesn't align with your current level of thinking as the goals you should be, and I use shoulds in inverted commas, setting. And when you're identifying what you really want, that involves giving yourself permission, and it ties into this, removal of ego. Give yourself permission to lower the bar. Give yourself permission to scrap your entire current goals list. Give yourself permission to set a goal that may not be as cool, that may not make you look as good on the outside, but makes you feel much better on the inside. That goal may change from, I'm going to make 120 grand this year or 500 grand this year, to I'm going to get an extra 1 hour sleep a night. I'm going to have a date night with my partner every week. It may not sound as cool, and it may not fit into the entrepreneurial hustle porn, to quote a phrase from a guy called Christopher Lockhead, but it may be much more aligned with you, and it may make you feel, and again, we're coming back to feelings, more at peace. And separating those wants from those shoulds I should do this, I should grow my business like that, I should make this much money, I should have this many customers, I should be on this many platforms this many times a day, sending this many emails to this many people, creating this many videos. But is that little voice saying, yeah, but I don't really want that? What is that want? And how is it different from the should? And is there fear behind that goal or behind that voice? Or is there love behind it? And again, it may sound a bit woolly for some people, but every decision, I believe, comes from either a place of fear and scarcity, i.e., we are moving away from something, or it comes from a place of love and abundance, i.e., we're moving towards something. So when we're setting a goal, are we creating a goal because we genuinely, in our core, feel inspired to move towards that thing that we're setting? Or do we feel like we are afraid of where we are now and we have to move away from it in order to stop feeling that, whether it's inadequacy, whether it's doubt, whether it's not being noticed, not being recognized, not being able to support our family? Just tune into what the energy is behind the goals that you have been setting up to now and the goal that you may be about to set. And then finally, on identifying what you really want, less is more. If you go to, you read most books about entrepreneurship, you go to, I'm a mentor on the NatWest Business Accelerator. I also did a workshop for the University of West of England last week. And so the people going through those programs are all about scaling. They're all about adding to their team. They're all about making more money. They're all about finding more funding, because they think that growth equals more, or that growth, to have more growth, you need more stuff, more goals, more money, more team, whatever. But when it comes to goal setting, less is more. Excuse me. So often we set goals in every area of our life. We set 10 business goals a year. The chances are, if we set 10, all we're doing is we're spreading the resources thinner, the resource that I mentioned at the beginning, more thinly, whether it's our energy, whether it's our time, whether it's our money. So just look at that list that you either have consciously or subconsciously. Look at the areas that you're trying to move forward in, whether it's your relationship, your health, your spirituality, your holidays, your finances, your business. And then maybe just write them all down if you haven't already, and go, how many of those do I truly care about? And which ones would move the needle the most for me? Which ones would make me feel the happiest? Which ones would make me feel the most confident? Which ones would make the biggest impact in my life? And give yourself permission. That goes again to point 2, give yourself permission to scrap the rest of those goals. So often we have fear around that, because we think, well, if I get rid of this goal, then that means I'm lowering the bar, which means I'm going to lose my drive, which means I'm not going to achieve what I want to achieve. But it's the opposite. All we're doing is we're telling ourselves that this goal is the most important thing for us, and that all of the others, they're not gone away. They're just, for now, they are not what we are truly focusing on. So we're conserving our energy, and we're allowing ourselves to say, those things are valuable, but right now, I don't want them enough. I'm going to focus on this instead, which not only legitimizes our non-achievement of those other goals, but it also allows us to focus our time and energy on what we really want. So you've set the foundation, you've checked in emotionally, you've checked your current situation and your beliefs, you've set your ego aside, you've identified what it is you really want based on listening to that inner voice, based on tuning in emotionally, based on making sure you're separating your fears and the fear and the love and the shoulds and the wants and the scarcity and the abundance. Now it's about making sure there is alignment. So you've kind of come up with maybe a rough goal or two. Now it's about making sure it's aligned. So ask yourself these questions. Will this goal allow me to utilize my gifts and my resources? Will it allow me to utilize my gifts and my resources? And by gifts, I'm very, very conscious to state the difference between gifts and skills. Skills are just something anybody can learn. Yes, obviously some people have mad skills that we can spend our entire lives learning and never be as good at. But there is a difference between a skill and a gift. And a gift is the kind of thing, or is the thing that we often don't value because it comes so naturally to us. It's the thing that we do so subconsciously and so automatically, we barely even recognize it as a thing of value. And we could have a whole other webinar about identifying gifts and how designing your business around your gifts is critical. But we can bring it, for this context, we can bring it into the conversation of goal setting. Does this goal that I'm setting allow me to live into my gifts and make the most of the resources I have at my disposal? So, for example, we may set a goal to say, well, I want to get my business to the first page on Google for the keyword searches that I've determined are important. Now, in order to get on the first page of Google, that involves SEO knowledge, that involves SEO skills, that involves a keenness to learn and an understanding of the algorithms, an attention to detail, and all of this kind of stuff. Now, for me personally, none of those areas are an area of interest or an area of skill, and they're certainly not an area of my gifts. So for me to set that as a goal would require me finding somebody to do that for me, which takes time and money and energy. Or it involves me learning that myself, which is taking me out of my, to quote Gay Hendricks' term, zone of genius. It's also taking me away from my gift. It's taking me out of flow. So for me, that wouldn't necessarily be a brilliant goal. There may be other ways I could achieve a similar outcome through a different goal that allows me to stay within my zone. So if my ultimate goal is to grow my business in terms of the number of leads that I create, I would then question whether being on the first page of Google is the way I want to do that. For me, maybe I want to stand up on stage more. Maybe I'd want to meet more people by going to more networking functions, doing more Q&As, doing more workshops, because that is aligned with my gifts. Although you can feel free to disagree on that one if you want. And it allows me to stay in a place where I'm energized. So I've checked in there with the ultimate goal. I've gone back to first principles and realized, okay, is there another way I can set a goal that actually utilizes my gifts and keeps me in that sort of zone? It keeps me in my flow. And also your resources. What resources do you have available? Resources can be money. So if I have loads of money in the bank, I can just throw money at that Google SEO problem and get somebody to do it for me, in which case it still could be a valuable goal. Or the resources could be, I have somebody in my team, or I have access to a contractor who is a Jedi when it comes to Google and SEO. Resources come in lots of different shapes and sizes. It could be time. Your business at the moment could be quiet, and for whatever reason you have an abundance of time in your life. Therefore, the goal could be achieved by just plugging away. Again, make sure it's aligned with the gifts as well, because if you're plugging away doing something you don't love, that's going to de-energize you. It's going to take you away from your zone. It's going to kill your confidence, and it's going to end up leaving you exhausted. So make sure that the alignment that the goal that you create, is aligned and utilizes the gifts and your resources. Secondly, and this is a big one that so many people don't do, will I enjoy the journey? Will I enjoy the journey? So this goal that I have set, it may be a lofty goal, it may be a small goal, but on the way to that goal being reached, am I going to enjoy it? Or is it about the end itself? There's a huge difference between doing something as a means to an end and doing something for the end itself. And I'm sure some of you have heard a lot of sports teams now, a lot of athletes, they talk about goal setting and they focus on the process, not on the outcome. Another one in sports is focus on the process and the scoreboard takes care of itself. So before you go into a sports game, you don't go, yeah, our goal is to win 2-0. You say, our goal is to pay attention to the things that we said we're going to do, and the scoreboard will take care of itself. In the process of that, are you going to enjoy the journey? So if your goal is to knock a minute off your time running 5 kilometers, the way to do that might be to do more shuttle sprints twice a week instead of once a week. Am I going to actually enjoy that? Is it worth the outcome in the first place? Because so often we set a goal and we go, the goal is really cool because when I achieve it, I'm going to feel good. It's going to make me feel validated. I'm going to know I've landed. I'm going to know I'm on the right path and I'm nailing it. But as you can probably tell from my smile, when that just never happens, that those times never happens, because a lot of you, I'm sure, are high achievers. So what we do is we set a goal, and as we get closer to actually realizing that goal, we just move. Before we've achieved it, we then move the bar again further on, and we move the bar again further on. So we never get to that point in the first place. So the end doesn't often exist, which means the journey has to be enjoyable. Because if the journey is the only thing you're actually going to experience, if you're not enjoying it, it's going to have all of those emotional impacts that I described earlier. It's going to take away your confidence. It's going to make you You're going to lose your energy, you're going to lose, and you're going to be exhausted, and you're going to be apathetic. So make sure you enjoy the journey. And on this, so many people set very lofty goals. Let's say I want to build a business that helps 1 million people worldwide. I want to take 1 million people out of poverty worldwide. That's a very noble goal. It's a very lofty goal. And if you achieve it, then hats off to you. You deserve all the credit you can get. But the challenge with that goal is, A, what's the journey you're going to go on to achieve that? Now you're going to enjoy it. But also, and this isn't mentioned on this slide, that's a destination goal. And the challenge with that is that every single day you're not achieving that goal until you've reached that £1 million or million person figure. So every single day you wake up and you go, okay, well, it's 2 people so far. Oh my God, I'm a long way away from 1 million. And then it becomes 10,000. You go, I'm still a really long way away from 1 million. And it becomes 100,000, then 400,000, and 500,000. And all the while you're not achieving that goal because the goal has not yet been reached. The goal will only be reached when that million person mark is hit. So that's not an iterative goal. That's like it's a line in the sand, and that can work for some people. But be really conscious of the fact that until you reach that mark, you have not achieved your goal, which may reinforce the fact that we've got a long way to go, and it may start to undermine your confidence. So a better goal may be, I want to help the world. I want to help alleviate poverty from the world, 1 person at a time. So that every single day you wake up and you've helped 1 more person, you go, brilliant, tick. I am achieving my goal, and I'm getting constant reminders that that's the case. And then the final element of how to set and actually create and execute successful goals is to make it happen. And there's some elements of this that some of you I know will do, and some of you probably won't do or won't be aware of the impact. Bring others for the ride. So start by bringing some accountability people on board. Tell people the goal that you have set. Again, once you've been through all of the steps that we've talked about before, you've checked in emotionally, you've made sure it's aligned, you've set a goal that you really want, you've listened to that voice, you've given yourself permission, you know it makes you feel good, and you know you're going to enjoy the journey. Then invite others along for the ride, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your business partner, your co-founder, your team. Tell people this is the goal that you or they can come along on with you. Be really clear about it, and invite regular feedback, invite accountability from them, invite support from them, invite them to challenge you every now and again to make sure that that is still the goal that you want. And that's a critical bit, because what a lot of people don't do when they set goals is they become fixed. When it becomes a need that we talked about before, becomes part of their identity, it becomes fixed. We set that goal, and no matter what happens, that goal needs to be reached. So COVID happens, doesn't matter, I'm still going to reach that goal. Okay, there's a war in Ukraine, doesn't matter, I'm still going to reach that goal. Brexit happens, that doesn't matter, I'm still going to reach that goal. We don't allow ourselves to be pragmatic. We're dogmatic instead of pragmatic. So when you have other people coming along for the ride, there's another voice that can come in and say, right, okay, circumstances have changed, your personal circumstances may have changed, you know, your living situation has changed, your relationship status has changed, your health situation has changed. Mate, are you sure that this is the path that you want to be on? And of course, they can also support you along the way as well. Create a vision. I do this every single day. I have a cold shower at the end of my normal warm shower, and I do my affirmations, and I have a vision of the goals or the gratitude that it is that I have in my mind at that moment, or, you know, for that week or for that month. When we start to visualize what it is that we want to achieve, we start to become really clear about what it looks like, who's involved. We maybe create a scene, imagining when we have achieved that goal. We're starting to create some neural pathways. We're programming our reticular activating system, our RAS in our brain, to pick up on things that are relevant to the goal. We're telling our brain certain things are important. So we may create a goal to find the most amazing customer engagement manager for our business. And we've gone through all of the steps. We've told our brain it's really important that this awesome person who's energetic and bubbly and aligned with our vision and aligned with my mission is out there, and want to bring them onto the team. We've told others about this goal. People are out there also people are tuned into that is your goal. They're going to likely remember this goal when they meet people. You've then got a vision of it in your mind. So your brain goes, right, this is the person I'm looking for. This is the thing I'm looking for. You're going to be so much more tuned into when that person comes into your life, or even if you hear about that person through somebody else, your brain goes, remember, Jim, you said that was important. That's your reticular activating system going from the subconscious to the conscious, saying, this is important to you. You've told me it's important. I'm now flagging it up. Do you want to do anything about it? And we start to move towards that. That's why when we buy a new car, all of a sudden, everyone seems to have the new car that we've just bought, because our brain now notices it, because it recognizes it as important, whereas before it didn't. So it starts to flag it up every single time. So creating a vision around the goal that we are setting is critical. And then finally, you've got to allow it to change for the same reasons I said before. Circumstances change, your mission may change, your purpose may change, your mood may change. Be flexible with your goal. There's no point in being dogmatic. The idea that winners never quit is it's an absolute fallacy. Winners know exactly when to quit. They know when to quit because they realize that goal is no longer serving them. If you wake up in the morning and your goal has a negative energy, and I've done this as recently as earlier this year, I had a goal and I wasn't achieving it, and it was quite a lofty goal. And every single day when I was in the shower and I was telling myself that goal, there was a little voice in my head going, you are miles away from achieving this goal, and I don't believe you're ever going to get there. And all that did was create a negative energy, which started to undermine the purpose of the goal in the first place. So I checked in with myself eventually, and I allowed that goal to change, and I set a goal that was much more aligned with where I wanted to be and made me feel more at peace. And when I say at peace, I don't just mean relaxed. I don't just mean I was letting myself off the hook. I mean, I was choosing something to move towards that utilized my gifts and inspired me and energized me rather than left me feeling inadequate. So there's a lot in there. There's a lot of points, some of which you will have heard before, some of which you may not have heard before or even considered. So just a quick sort of a summary, I suppose. If in doubt, don't create a goal. If you're not sure, if nothing's grabbing you as inspiring that you really want to move towards, just be okay with not having one. Find your certainty in other areas of your life. Just say, you know what, for now, nothing is important enough. But when it is, I'm going to notice it and I'm going to go through those steps and I'm going to set a goal purposefully. If it's making you feel worse, if you have set a goal and you realize you're not reaching it and it's making you feel worse, it's making you feel like you're not enough, it's making you feel annoyed or frustrated, or you start to blame other people, reassess. You may want to change that goal. You may want to change the way that you achieve that goal, or you may want to scrap it completely. And finally, make sure that goal works for you. We talked about emotion a lot in this. We talked about energy. This goal is you. This is your thoughts, your beliefs, your fears, your narratives, your stories. So it has to be aligned with you, not somebody else. Don't listen to a podcast and just create a goal because that's what worked for them, because you don't know who they are. You don't know the story they've been on. You don't know the situation they're in. That goal has to work for you. Okay. So in the meantime, I hope that was useful. Would love to keep in contact with any of you that feel who would like to dig more into that. If you would like to take a quiz, this is a quiz on my website. I'll put the link in the chat, and it's excuse me, it's called the Find Your True Path quiz. I think some of you on this call have done it already, and it allows you to land in one of these quadrants, and it helps you realize how close to living in your playground you are and how self-aware that you are. And if you're in that top right corner, it means you're on the right path. It means you're loving what you're doing and you're aware of it. So this will just help you land. It'll help you it'll help you get clarity on how close it is to treading your true path you are. And goal setting is a critical part to that. The more you know yourself, the more you know what your playground is, the more you can set goals that are aligned with that. So if you want to take that quiz, feel free. It's about 3 minutes long. And if you would like to book a one-on-one call with me, I am more than would love to do that. It's a 15-minute call. Again, I will put the link in the chat. And in the meantime, I will hand you back over to Mike.
Thank you, Jim. Fascinating stuff again, as always. I would just say that when Jim's done previous sessions for us, and we've had people who've been involved in these sessions, have had that follow-up call with them, we've had tremendous feedback in terms of the sort of clarity and help that Jim's been able to give them in terms of taking their personal life, their business life forward. Now, we do have just a few questions in the chat box. So my immediate goal is to try and read my own handwriting. So I'll give that a go. The first one is, how do I know when to give up on a goal?
How do you know when to give up on a goal? That involves listening to that voice that I described when I was in the shower, and I hope that wasn't too much of a vivid vision for people, but it was that voice going, yeah, you can do that, you can set that goal, that's a really good goal. When you achieve that, that's going to be awesome. And listen to the other voice going, you've got no chance. You're no closer to this goal than you were when you first set it. This is you're not going anywhere. That voice was undermining my confidence. It was taking my energy away. So I was conscious that the purpose of that goal, it was starting to undermine its own purpose, essentially. So it's starting to take away from me. So that's a really clear and obvious way of knowing when to quit on that goal or not, when it's starting to have a detrimental impact.
Okay, thank you for that. Second question that's come in, you kind of touched on this, I think, in the talk, but maybe expand on it. I've always been taught that setting big goals will lead to bigger results, and yet what you're saying seems to contradict this. Would you like to expand? Yeah,
and this is, again, this isn't necessarily a right or wrong. This is a person by person thing. So big goals work for some people, but they don't work for everybody. And often we hear of the big goal setting idea and concept from the people who it works for. We're not going to hear about it from the people it doesn't work for. They're not going to be interviewed on a podcast because of the goals they didn't achieve. They're not going to write a book based on the goals they didn't achieve. So those people often have a character, a risk tolerance, an internal confidence or belief that they need to set a big goal in order to achieve it, and it works for them. But for a lot of other people, and I wouldn't go as far as saying most people, although that may be the case, a lot of people, bigger goals actually make people feel more inadequate. They scare some people, or they scare a lot of people, and they create a gap. Dan Sullivan, a famous coach and author, he talks about the gap and the gain. What a lot of people do, especially high performing people do, is they focus on the gap between where they are and where they want to go, versus the gain if they look around and say, wow, this is how far I've come since I started. And when we only focus on the gap, it breeds that cycle of uncertainty and fear and self-doubt, as I mentioned earlier. So if we're setting a big goal, we're just increasing that gap. And again, that gap may work for some people, maybe the fuel or rocket up somebody's arse that they needed, but for a lot of people, it just cripples the confidence. So just be really mindful of that. And the fear that people have about reducing that goal is they think that, their identity is questioned. Well, I'm not really the heavy hitter that I thought I was. I'm not really the high achiever, hard charger that I thought I was. I'm going to undermine my drive. I'm going to lose my ambition, which just doesn't happen. It's just not the case.
So, okay, thanks, Jim. A question's just popped up which might be a little bit time sensitive, so I'll cover it now. We've had one of our participants asking about the 15-minute session and booking with you, and whether they book via FSB or your website. It's not via FSB. Do you want to just repeat how people can get in touch with you?
Yeah, sorry, I did just put it in the chat, but I think it may have just gone to you, Mike. If you could, I don't know if you could copy and paste. There's two links there. You've got the connection call booking.
Yeah.
And then the quiz below that. The quiz you can do through my website. It's just a menu item. The connection call booking isn't available publicly, so that link is only available through this webinar. And if you guys share that, on the website afterwards, obviously feel free. And if you wanted to go ahead and book a coaching call, you can also do that. That's a paid coaching call, 45 minutes long. It's a real deep dive into who you are and the journey you're on, the challenges you're facing. You can do that through my website as well.
Super. I'll just pop those two links in the chat box to everybody. I think if anybody can't get through, by all means, get in touch with me. It's michael.goodall@fsb.org.uk, and I'll be able to get that sorted for you. Just a couple more questions before we wrap this up. Got somebody saying, I've got a bunch of goals on my list at the moment. How do I choose which ones to prioritize?
So if that was me, what would I do? I would take myself off to somewhere quiet, tune out the noise, make sure you're not listening to any podcasts, or you haven't been talking to somebody, and it's not in a chattery place with sort of distraction, which is going to allow you to listen to your inner voice. It's going to allow you to pay attention to how you actually feel, and just read each goal out to yourself. If you're in public, do it to yourself, because that would look weird. And as you read the goal out, imagine yourself pursuing that goal. Imagine the pain of going for that goal, not just the benefits, because we often just focus on the positive sides of it, and we deny ourselves the costs that it may have. And as we're going through them, just tune into how they make us feel, how we react when we read them out. Do we feel at peace and at ease, or do we feel a tenseness? Do we feel a negativity towards it? Do we feel a fear towards it? Do we feel like it's driven by a need for comparison or to be enough? Again, I keep coming back to feeling, I keep coming back to energy, and it's going to put some people off. They're going to think it's weird and pointless, but it's so critical, because your energy and your confidence are essential to whether you achieve a goal or not, and the impact that it has if you don't. So just tune into how each of those feel. Bring somebody into the conversation who you know and trust as well, and who supports where you're going critically, not just where you are now. Because sometimes, as sad as it is, your spouse, your family don't necessarily, they don't support the journey that you're going, because they like and know you as you are. So if you're setting goals, they may go, no, I wouldn't go for that. Where you are now is really good. So just be really mindful of that if you're bringing people into that conversation. You might want to bring in a mentor or a peer or a colleague.
Super, thank you, Jim. Just so that people know, this is the last question we have at the moment. So we'll end on this one unless anything else comes through. But you've used a number of terms during your presentation, like love, abundance, and others. Can't read my writing at that point. There you go. But could you describe, or clarify a little bit more about what you mean by some of those terms, and how they apply in this sort of scenario?
Yeah. Again, these phrases mean some things to some people, but not for some people who've never heard of them, and it sounds weird, especially in the context of goal setting. Just imagine us humans are wired, we will only change when the pain of what we're doing is enough for us to move away from it. So we touch the stove, it's hot instantly, we react. Or we are moving towards pleasure. We're avoiding pain, or we're trying to move towards pleasure. It's as simple as that. So when we are setting a goal, or when we're making a decision, or when we're making a change, it's either coming from a place of fear and a scarcity. And when I say scarcity, I mean, if I'm winning, somebody else is losing. There's only a finite amount of money in the world. So if somebody else has got it, I can't have it. If I'm feeling love, somebody else can't have it. Or from a place of fear, which is, I need this. If I don't have this, I won't be enough. And it's unfortunately so common in the sporting world, where you'll see how many people retire, or they win the gold medal, or they win something, and they say, how do you feel? And they go relieved. Their main driver was not because the love of the thing, it was to avoid the pain of not winning that thing in the first place, because not winning it meant their identity was questioned, their place in the world was questioned. So their goals often came from a place of fear and scarcity. And for some people, that's fine. For a lot of people, Thierry Henry was commentating on the Man United match last night, and he said, I wish I'd enjoyed my playing career more. If I'd scored a hat-trick, I wanted to score 4. I just didn't allow myself to enjoy it in the moment. And I've heard that countless times. And that's for people who are earning tens of thousands of pounds a week and they're on the world stage. So if it applies to them, it certainly applies to you. Just make sure you enjoy the journey. Make sure that the thing behind the goal isn't fear of trying to avoid failing or avoid not being noticed, but it's actually the love of wanting to make an impact, or the love of wanting to grow.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Jim. That brings to a close the questions we've had in. So thank you again to all our participants. I hope that, like me, you found that really insightful and really useful. And what we always aim to do with these sessions is give you something that you can take away, think about and apply straight away in your own lives and businesses. I think there's an awful lot of content there, which it certainly resonated with me, and I'm sure it did with a number of our participants. So a big thank you again to Jim for doing this session for us. Take that opportunity to have that one-to-one session. So the details are in the chat box. We'll keep it open for another couple of minutes. And we already had a couple of people feedback very kindly saying what an excellent session it was, and they found it really useful, which is always great. Love that kind of feedback, as you might imagine. But if you have enjoyed the event today, please do leave us, that being FSB, a Trustpilot review. We really appreciate it. And, you know, we get these reviews saying these are good events. It just encourages us to do even more. So if you're minded to do so, please drop us a Trustpilot review. I think we'll pop a link into the chat box so that you can do that. And finally, from me, you've actually got well, one of FSB's goals is to make best use of everybody's time. And so you've actually got a few minutes of your life back before lunch on a Thursday. What more could you possibly want? So big thank you again to Jim. Big thank you to everybody for attending, and see you again next time. Goodbye.